Jack Watts. I modeled the Grand Trunk Western. Time period of 1967 to 70. A little freelance here and there. Along with that, we modeled the Detroit to Little Shoreline with all the interchange railroads that are involved in Detroit and Toledo. I modeled the marine operations as well in Detroit. They went from Detroit to Windsor. I don't know if you can see it. We also have the Muskegon operations as well. The layout is a switching layout with a lot of information provided by former railroaders when I worked for Canadian National. I have a lot of documentation for switching industry names. I pride the layout on how much switching there is. So if you like to switch, come on over. We have everything from passenger trains, commuter trains, local switch jobs, mainline trains, interchange trains. If you want to learn how to switch and run a railroad, come on by.
What inspired you to create your model railroad?
I would say my inspiration came from my father. He used to build models, and when I got old enough, he bought me a train set, and the bug just bit. He used to take me rail fanning in Delray, in the downriver area of Detroit. I fell in love with the red, white, and blue and the Grand Trunk as a child. And as things progressed, I got to know more people that were in the hobby and taught me how railroad really operates. Tom Lenzen, for those of you who know that name, was a big influence in why this railroad is as crazy as it is and how big it is. He got me into the operations on his 2-rail O-scale layout of the Ypsilanti branch of the New York Central. I used to be a yard master on that layout. So when I finally got a chance to build my own layout, the Grand Trunk fulfilled a lot of things that I liked in the trains. The variety of trains to run, the marine operations, and just the variety that the Grand Trunk in the Detroit area opened up the possibilities for operations to go crazy. I started out modeling steam. My parents were very supporting of the hobby. Sure, a few of you that'll be watching this have been to the house in Dearborn. That layout was smaller, but we made it work and we had a lot of fun. We modeled steam, but just like the real railroad, we wore out the steam engines. And we wore out parts, we wore out side rods, so we initially made the decision to switch to diesels because just like the real railroad, they're less maintenance intensive. Going forward, I fell in love with the auto industry and trains. So this time period offers a lot of colorful cars along with the older equipment. So that's kind of why I picked this time period. Plus, I like Penn Central, have a little bit of a soft spot, but I still wanted to keep the NYC and Pennsy flavor on the layout. So that's why I picked this time period.
Good. So I noticed your layout is in HO. Is that your preferred scale? Would you do another if you could? If you had to start all over again, would you pick the same one?
If I had unlimited time, unlimited money, I would go to 2-rail O scale. Because we're operating on Tom's layout, the way the trains would operate and act like the real thing was really impressive. Plus, they're easier to work on when they're bigger. But I love HO because of just the availability of equipment, structures, size. I'm pretty fond of S scale, but we all don't have a huge basement, so HO was the selected one to stay with.
Yeah, that's a major factor when it comes to building layouts and
this basement's 41 by 21, and as you'll see later, there's a lot of stuff crammed into a lot of space.
What are the challenges you faced when building your layout, and how did you overcome them?
Challenges, a lot of it was with wiring. I was fortunate to have a friend of mine that was a master electrician that taught me a lot of how to make switch machines work. I've had a lot of influence from Ron King with building the layout. He is, I believe, a tool and die maker by trade, but he had come up with a lot of clever ways to face the challenges of lifting a lot of the staging yards into place. Some of the drop bridges that allow you to to Port Huron and then the Pontiac Belt. Those are Ron's designs. So I've had a lot of influence from a lot of people and a lot of different crafts. One of my good friends is a carpenter. You know, he taught me a lot of little cheat codes on cutting wood and how to make things fit. And a lot of it's just trial and error. There were never plans. There's never a track schematic. I'm one of those that just puts up bench work, lays track, and if it doesn't work, I tear it all out and start over. And I like building the bench work ahead of time and then laying out the track, because just like the rear railroad, they only had so much land they could work with. So I thought that would be more of a challenge when it came to representing the areas I wanted to model.
That's a interesting point of view. I don't think I've heard that one before. I like it.
Something different.
Yeah. What is your favorite part of your layout and why?
Oh, I have two favorite portions of the layout. Brush Street Station downtown. That piece of the layout was brought from my mom and dad's house. It's my favorite part because of a lot of memories of people that have unfortunately passed that helped build that. It helps keep their memory alive. The fun part is people that operated at my parents' house, if they come over here and they realize that it's backwards on the control panel, which we all get a good laugh at that still. Just a lot of memories of my father and Tom and Bob McMurtry and a few other people. They all put their hands on that section of layout, and to still have it, you know, makes me feel good. My pride and joy of the layout is Milwaukee Junction. It's one of the most fascinating pieces of track work, and the way everything's structured, I just fell in love with that scene, and it was a huge goal of mine to recreate that. Another area of the layout I like too is FN Tower on the shoreline, which you'll see later. It's a very unique crossing of diamonds, interchange tracks, so I wanted to capture that on the layout. But I would say probably my favorite part of the layout is Milwaukee Junction, because of just how much is in that area.
So how do you approach your detailing procedures and when you go to finish off the scenery?
Well, let's see. It's an operating layout, and anybody that has done operations will learn that details get in the way sometimes. I am not a huge person with detail. I like to put enough detail to get the eye to focus and enjoy the scene, but I don't like to over detail it, because more of my focus is on the operations versus the buildings and everything. When I moved in the house, I had a lot of water leaks, which you'll probably see in the video later, that I don't have a lot of backdrops yet, because in the last few years we finally got that to stop. So hopefully going forward we'll be adding a lot of backdrops to help the depth of field and background look better. Details, when you have an operating layout, people are reaching over, sometimes things get broken, and for me, I just avoid all that fine detail, because it's just something that sometimes gets in the way. And like I said earlier, we focus more on the operations of things. Like the locomotives, I have enough detail to get it to close enough. I'm a person that doesn't have to be exact as long as it represents. That's what makes me happy.
What is your favorite locomotive or rolling stock model on your layout?
On the layout, my favorite two locomotives are the Grand Trunk Artist ones, 1950, 1951. For those who know me, my father was a huge influence in the hobby. My dad liked to build models, and his hobby was painting and building locomotives. He's painted 90% of the locomotives on this layout. Unfortunately, we lost Dad last year, and it makes me happy to know that when I come down here, he's still alive and well with me down here. But he painted the 1950, which is in the green and gold scheme, and then I painted the 1951 in the black and red. And we kind of had a competition as father and son when we put those together. But Dad ultimately won that battle, because he didn't think the decals came out well on the 51, so he finished the job. And I knew he liked doing that, so I kind of let him have that win.
That's good. You have those memories, and
Indeed.
That's what this is all about. Have you incorporated anything unique into your layout that you're particularly proud of?
Absolutely. As much as I love trains, I love Great Lakes shipping. I grew up on the water. My family was on the water, a lot of fishing, boating, days like that. So, of course, every time we saw a freighter, we go after it because it was fun to take pictures and see them up close, especially when I was a kid. So I would say with the unique thing to the layout is the Grand Trunk had two marine operations. One in Detroit, which ferried cars over to Windsor. They had two car floats, self-propelled. The Lansdowne, which was side wheeler, and then they had the Huron, which was a propelled car float. They would ship cars over to Windsor. So when you walk down the stairs in the basement, the first thing you'll encounter is a Great Lakes freighter at the Robin Hood Flour Mill, and then you'll see the Huron car float, which is an active part of the staging yard, fiddler yard operation I have on the layout. When you're operating, guys will pull and spot cars. And then I was able to get my hands on two blueprint cabinets. For those that remember Skip McDonald and his store out there in Pinckney, Michigan, I was able to get those cabinets. He had to sell stuff in his retail store. So we use those blueprint cabinets as a fiddler yard operation. You'll see later, one drawer's to Canada, the other drawer's to the United States. So when guys pull and spot the boat after they return back to the yard, their job is to then recycle the cars on the boat. And you can hand pick. You can put one car, you can fill the boat up. It's your choice. That's what makes that fun. The other operation I have is the Grand Rapids car ferry I built in Muskegon. I find that the staging and filler yard operation allows you to move a lot more cars, and it allows a lot more fun activity for switching. A lot of guys that are into the hobby don't understand marine operations, get fascinated by it. We're loading rail cars onto a boat on water. And the fiddler operation applies too for Muskegon. You just pull and spot the boat, and then you refill the boat up with what you want out of the same blueprint cabinet. I find it to be a very unique thing when it comes to shipping and trains and how they're related, like the steel mill industry, the automotive industry. I try to incorporate a lot of that, which is why I modeled the Grand Trunk, because all that's here.
What role does technology play in your model railroad hobby, and are there any digital control systems that you have implemented within your layout?
Yes, we started off with Digitrax. I got started with a DB150, I believe, years ago. The hobby, or the technology, is growing. A good friend of mine, Rob Gruber from Cincinnati, has been a huge help with the Digitrax stuff, and another friend of mine, Ian Deck from Windsor. Those two guys, I don't know what I would do without them, because they've bailed me out many times with issues. We've come a long way with the technology. We've gone from the UT4 throttles and DT400s, which we still use because they work. I don't want to upgrade systems because this one's working fine. We'll knock on wood. But we have integrated JMRI into it. I am using the TCS wireless throttles, and going forward, I've been telling guys that they should pick one up because you can use them at multiple layouts. And I love being hands-free with the router. We also have the ability, if you have your cell phone, a smartphone, you can download, I believe it's Engine Driver, or I can't remember the name of the app for the iPhone, but those can be integrated into the JMRI system through the laptop, or I mean computer down there. Yeah. Those are probably the most technological things I have. I try and keep it simple. I don't want to go too crazy. I'm still learning a lot about that stuff. But for technology, that's what we have. We have Digitrax incorporated with JMRI, and that's been a fun ride to make that all work. We finally got all the bugs out of the system. Anybody building a layout of this scale will learn that there's no manual on how to put a DCC system together. So there's been a lot of trial and error, a lot of heartfelt, angry evenings of why can't we figure this out? And the one thing I've learned about this hobby is make a lot of friends that have a lot of experience in a lot of different fields, because they can help you out.
How'd you source your materials and accessories for the layout?
The bulk of the layout came from a friend of mine. He called me up. He had a friend that unfortunately passed. he said, come on over, help me dismantle it, and you can have all the plywood and supplies. So I helped him out there. So a lot of that came from there. Most of the layout, the main operating area is plywood and homosote. Homosote I got from Man's Lumber here in Trenton. Most of the lumbers come from Lowe's or Home Depot. Wiring, a lot of stuff was just given to me. A lot of, like I said, have a lot of friends in different places. I've had a lot of wire gifted to me, so that's gotten a lot of projects done. And I hate to say it, but Amazon's been a huge help too. You need something on the fly, it comes the next day.
It's hard to argue with that. It shows up at your door, right?
Exactly.
Do you participate in any model road clubs or communities? I know you got your Facebook group. Is there anything else?
I haven't really been into the clubs. Nothing against the clubs. I've just always had a layout at home, and I've gone to a lot of the local Detroit area layouts. I would say a lot of it influenced, like I said, from Tom Lenz and his layout, and then just the guys around here. I've hung out here and there. I used to work for the Railroad. I do not anymore because I missed out on a lot of things, so I decided to make a career change. But in the time before the Railroad, I did get to a lot of the local guys and operate on their layouts, and a lot of influence from other layouts was applied to this one to make it work.
What advice would you give someone who's starting out in the hobby?
Don't do it. Just kidding. Start small. If you have no background in trains or don't understand the railroading, I would suggest going to some of the local clubs, go to the train shows. Train shows were a big thing for me when I was little because they would bring layouts and you get to see what these guys would do and just the ideas start rolling. And it depends on what you want to do. Operations is a big thing for me, but not everybody's into that. Some people just like to watch a train go around the layout, that's fine too. But I would say if you want to get into the hobby, get a starter set, start small, watch YouTube, get on Facebook, become a member of some of these groups. There's a lot of great influencers out there. And just go from there. This list layout has gone way beyond what I started with. I'm more than happy with this monster. I wouldn't want it any bigger because I can handle it myself. But that's what I would do. I would start small and just get involved, and don't be afraid to try things. That's the biggest thing with this hobby. A lot of this I just learned on the fly. Building buildings, building cars, doing the wiring, doing decoders. Putting the lights in the ceiling, building benchwork. You just got to learn to get your hands dirty, and it's okay to make mistakes. You only learn by your mistakes, and it may hurt, it may suck for a little bit, but you'll get over the hump. We've all been there, and I would say that my biggest thing with this hobby is there's so many life skills that you can take away from building a layout, painting, wiring, carpentry. You can throw plumbing in there. Some of the places I've got plumbing running for wires to run through. I would just say just jump in the pool and don't be afraid.
Very good. Do you have any memorable moments you'd like to share that happened on your model railroad?
Well, there could be a couple of them. We'll start with the old layout, Mom and Dad's. Couple railroaders coming over, turns into the real railroad. Everybody has fun, and it turns into a game of who can send more cars to each other's yards. That was a good time. My experience with the real railroad, I've got 15 years working for a short line. I worked for Canadian National on the Grand Trunk, so I could say I had the privilege to work on the real railroad that I model. Spending so much time with the guys. When people come over, I would say the memories of being out on the real railroad come down here, because a lot of the guys that work for the railroad also come to these operating sessions. And I would say the biggest fun memory down here was it turned into being in a crew room, just the arguing, bickering, picking on each other, just fun, good times that the hobby brings. And those guys that have the real world experience brought it down here, and when they show up, it just turns into a free-for-all down here. I enjoy it because it's so much fun when you can bring the real railroad into the model and know that it doesn't matter. It's just about having a good time down here. And those would probably be the memories, is when the real railroaders show up and it just turns into what I used to experience every day at work.
Awesome. Okay, well, this wraps up all my questions. Anything else you want to say?
I have a Facebook group which we'll include, and become a member, answer the questions. Just say you just saw this on YouTube and like be a member of the group, or wherever Dustin's going to post it. And I try to do a monthly operating session once a month, depending on scheduling, of course. Usually we do a Saturday, and it's always an Optia drop. We start at noon, and there's been a few times where we've gone 12, 14 hours operating. We usually take a little break for dinner, and sometimes people come in shifts, so it's fun. But I would say if anybody ever wants to come on over, just drop me a message, and we'll get you over here.
All right, thanks for having me.